Well, welcome to another edition of the Black Wealth Experience podcast. And we're just so excited. I'm Brian Arnold. You are in my backyard studio today. So if you see me going like this, it's because a bug is flying in my face or something like that. It's not really backyard studio. So I'm in the backyard because we got three grandkids that are in the house that are making lots of noise. And I tend to do a lot of these here. So thank you for being on today. We have just a great guest today. What I've been trying to do is make sure that we have an overview of several different people, whether we're talking to a credit person or a realtor person, or like we did when we did Medea, and we did the as a grandma getting her first house, how excited it is. But I want to see all walks of life. And so today, as I have Samantha on, is she's one of the younger folks that's part of our community that has been able to get into a house and to have a house. And because I want you to see that it's not just I have to wait 30, 40 years. I'm working with some clients now that are, they have 15 grandkids. I have 13 and they have 15, and they're getting ready to get into their first house. So they're seasoned and they've kind of been around a while, and they're excited about having their first house. But at the same time, you look at folks that are just getting started. You'll see the podcast with my kids that have their houses, and we kind of talk through that. One of the things I just want to make sure we mention is that we are having a Black Wealth Housing Summit. It's on June 19th. It's from 5:30 to 7:30. It's at the Cross Purpose Building, which is on the corner of Colorado and Martin Luther King Boulevard, in the same parking lot. They share the parking lot with the AME Church that's there. So if you've been around Denver for a while, you know exactly where that's at. We are going to pair you up with a real estate agent. We're going to pair you up with a loan officer, with a credit repair, with an insurance person, and with a financial advisor. What we want to do is we want to make sure that you have a plan. When you walk out of that meeting on that Monday night, it's on Juneteenth, so June 23rd, it's on June 23rd, it's June 19th, 2023. That's what, if you're watching this, 2024, 2025, you'll know you missed it and we have to do another one. But we want to make sure that you have this plan that when you walk out of there, you know exactly what you need to do to achieve homeownership. For some of you, you're ready right now and you just don't know it. For some of you, it's going to take six months, a year, maybe even 2 years for some of you. We just did, make sure you watch the one on credit and the things that we need to do with credit. But we need you to come to the summit so that we can put a plan together so you can realize homeownership. And I say this at every single one of these podcasts so far. If you are renting, you are paying 100% interest. If you are renting, and let's say you're doing $2,000 a month, and I know, Samantha, you're in St. Louis, and $2,000 a month might seem like a high rent, but here in Colorado, it's kind of like a normal rent. And so if you're paying $2,000 a month, that's $24,000 a year. If you stay in that apartment for 10 years, that's $240,000 that you've now paid that landlord. And then most likely, you paid for that unit if it's an apartment, and they're going to continue to rent it out over after you just paid for it for them, and now they're just pure profit after that because they don't even need to have a mortgage on it anymore. So with that said, you come to the Black Wealth Housing Summit on June 19th. Now for our guest, Samantha. Samantha, I just kind of mentioned that she doesn't live here in Colorado. She lives in St. Louis, Missouri. But we work together and we do a whole lot of stuff with our church together, but just a great person that if she'll let you, then we'll figure out how to make sure you can get in contact with her. And I'm not going to presume that that's what it is, but that's what one of the things is that she has been able to achieve is home ownership at an early age. And so I'm going to let her kind of tell her story, introduce herself, and kind of tell what, then we'll kind of go back and forth with some questions as we go. So Samantha, thank you for being on the show today. We sure appreciate you. Thank you for listening to me for whatever amount of minutes I just talked. But tell us, kind of give us your story and why home ownership was so important to you.
Okay, well, I am 30 and I'm about to celebrate my 2-year house anniversary next month.
All right.
So to be honest with you, I really never thought about buying a house. I vaguely considered it like something that people do when they get married. Like I was always like, I'm going to get married and have kids one day and you have a house when you do that. But I was not planning for it. And I've been single for like the last 8 years. So I can't say that I was really needing more space or anything. Mostly it was rent going up was like the driving need of it, where when I first started living on my own, my sister and I split a 2-bedroom apartment, and I think our rent there was $1,300, and we split that in half. And then I moved out on my own, and I was paying $1,400 for a 1-bed, 1-bath by myself. And I was there for 4 or 5 years. And by the last year, I was paying $1,750 for that same 1-bed, 1-bath.
Wow.
And really and truly, the rent was going up again, and I could not afford it. So I was talking to my parents about it, and my mom is a real estate agent. So she was telling me, she's like, your mortgage can be way less than your rent is. So my options were buy a house or move back in with my parents and save money and try again later. And we don't get along well enough for me to live. So we started the house hunting process. And I do credit all of this to my parents. So I think there's 3 things I want to say that were super helpful. The first one was when I bought my house, I did have an 800 credit score. And that is all credit to my dad and how he taught my sisters and I how to manage money. So my dad lives by it's the 50-40-10 rule, which is that every paycheck that you get, you give yourself 50% pay yourself first, like go to savings. 40% is to live off of, 10% goes to church. And so he was very strict on that. I think I was 7 or 8 when my dad first opened a bank account for me, and he would show us like every Saturday or every other Saturday, we would get our allowance, and he would always write us a check. So we would take it to the bank so we could do the physical process of like deposit half of it. And then with what you get back, you give 10% to church. And there was a whole thing learning that process. So that's how that's how we started managing money. And then I believe when I was in high school is when he added us as authorized users on his credit card, just to show us like how using credit cards worked. And my dad was very adamant that like credit cards are to buy time and not money. So he was very strict on like never charge something. If you do not have the money in your account right now, you cannot charge it. The only reason that you're charging it is to give yourself 30 days to pay it, as opposed to having to pay it right now. So that I think we all got credit cards probably in college, like opened our own and just lived by that rule of making sure that I had the money first and just using it for time. And so that's how I established credit. So having a good credit score really, really helped with just getting to have a bigger budget and also getting to put less down. The second thing is for first-time home buyers. I believe it's the mortgage company that helps you with this, but there's courses that first-time home buyers can take. And if you complete the course and you send your mortgage company like a certificate of finishing the first-time home buyer course, then you get like a lower interest rate, or you can put less down. And then the third thing was that my parents did gift me my down payment. We didn't do 20. I think we did 5% down. But that was like a conversation that we all had together, that they were like, we will give you this gift of the down payment. House is in your name. Mortgage payments are all going to you. Like, we're not co-signing on any loans here. Like, we're not helping in that respect. But, that's how we agreed to do it. And I will say, I could not have bought the house 2 years ago on my own because I did not have the money saved. If it's important to you to buy a house, that's another thing though, because I wasn't thinking about buying a house. The selling point for me was that, just so you guys have an idea, like, so I was paying $1,750 a month in rent. My mortgage is $1,000 even.
Wow.
So
okay.
It was one of those things where, just like hearing that from my mom, I was like, oh, why isn't everybody doing this? And the big kicker is the down payment, because that's a lump sum that you need to have to get started. So I would say, come up with a savings plan, because if I had been saving for that, I could have done it. And I just got to the month where it was like time to renew the lease. And it was like, well, I can't afford to renew the lease. So we're in crunch time here trying to figure it out. So from there, my mom is a real estate agent. So that was the third thing that was really helpful, is that she obviously knows the market, knows all the different areas of St. Louis. I ended up moving about an hour west of St. Louis. I live out in Lake St. Louis now. And it's a very safe area, like super nice neighborhood that my mom loves. It also is convenient, with her being my real estate agent, that like I grew up in my parents' house. So like we all have roundabout the same tastes and style when it comes to a house. So if I couldn't get off work, because I bought my house in 2021 where it was like it would go on the market on Tuesday. And if you did not schedule your appointment to see the house that day, it was gone on Wednesday. And I frequently I would book an appointment for the weekend because I was working during the week, and then the house would be gone before my appointment. So my mom was able to go see a lot of the places for me and would like FaceTime me in if I was working or that kind of thing. So that helped out a lot. And then I think learning your wish list, because there's a huge difference in like your dream home and your first home. Your first home is most likely not going to be your dream home, and that's okay. So I think it's like make a list of your deal breakers. Like, do you need a pool? Probably not. But you need a certain number of bedrooms and bathrooms based on how many people are in your house, that kind of thing. And then I would say I learned a lot from that first time home buyer course that I had to take, because I was very confused. I will be honest with you about that. I felt like the entire process was very overwhelming, very confusing. My mom helped out a lot with the front end, but then when we got to closing, my dad came with me to read through all of the paperwork. My dad's not a lawyer, but he's very analytical and he reads the fine print on everything that anybody ever signs. So it was helpful to have him there because he was asking a lot of questions that I wish I had an example of, but stuff that I just wouldn't know to ask. I was very like, I'm here, I'm signing the papers. And my dad was like, do you know what you're signing right now? And I would be like, nope. And he'd be like, okay, somebody explain to her what this paper is. Like, tell her specifically what she is signing. I think the biggest thing I didn't understand is when people say like, I bought a house for, $200,000, $300,000. The average person that doesn't own a house is like, you have $200,000. And like, that's where the down payment comes in, where it's like you put 5, 10 or 20% of that total down. And then what you're paying monthly is your mortgage. And you get 30, 40 years to pay off your mortgage. And based on interest rate, that tells you how many years it is. That whole thing had to be explained to me because I was like, how are we buying a house without 200,000?
Yeah, exactly. Oh my gosh. Well, let me tell you just, as I'm formulating this and I'm hearing you and it's so exciting to see. And I see the moral of like your story is to have a mom and dad. And so, like that can help you with this process. But what's neat about what I'm thinking through is, either we can borrow your mom and dad, we'll call them up and we'll say, hey, could you help us with this process? Or that's why we're doing this in the community, the real estate agents and the lenders and the people that we're putting together in our community to be that mom and dad for the people who are here. We have so many programs now for folks of color that are, what they call down payment assistance programs. And so, that 5%, that 10%, that 20%, I had a young, a mom that just qualified. We have a program here called the DPA, Metro DPA program, which looks at if your family lived in a red line district since 1938 up until now, you qualify for assistance. And she qualified for $25,000 as a down payment assistance. And it's a grant. It's not even you got to pay it back. We're going to give you $25,000 because your mom and your grandma or your auntie or whoever in your family lived in this red line district. We're going to have those folks on to talk to us as well. But one of the things that I think was really poignant about what you were saying is you're single, and you are a single at the time 28-year-old that is got life ahead of them and not thinking about a house. So for those that are listening right now that are saying, I've never even thought of a house, or I don't think I can have a house, what would be your advice, or what would you say to them about the difference between just going ahead and living in an apartment or purchasing a house? What would be the advice that you would give?
I definitely would advise getting the house. Not just because your mortgage can be less than your rent, but also it's an investment. You're building equity. You can sell it one day, whereas it really feels like when you're renting and it's just going up every year, it's kind of just being thrown away. But I think also consider what's important to you. Because I will say the thing that I miss about renting is just that if something breaks, you can call somebody and they send them and they fix it. Whereas if you own the house, like it's on you to fix it. And so there's a lot of finding contractors and the right people to do that kind of stuff for you. But I would also say I don't think that it's too late to plan. Like a lot of people think that like they had to know that they wanted a house when they were 20 so that they could start saving for it. And I think that you can make a plan at any time. I think you may need to adjust the idea of what your house is going to look like. And maybe there's a specific part of town that you want to live in. And there's a different part of town where the houses are going to be cheaper, but it's going to be just as safe and be just as close to the supermarket or whatever you're looking for. So I think the biggest thing is just widen your perspective, like really get you a good real estate agent who, when you tell them the area that you want to be in, they're thinking of similar areas. And they're not only going to take you to that one neighborhood that you asked for, but they're going to say, what do you like about that neighborhood? And then I'll show you where else you can get a similar thing.
Yeah, perfect. What would you say? Because I've heard this several times now when I'm working with, some women that are single, and they said, well, someday I may get married, and if I get a house now, then there's this kind of like feeling that and then maybe the person that they're going to marry might not already have a house, and then they can kind of control the money and the finances, or I'm never going to get married, but I don't know if I can do it on my own. And so I'll just wait till, I don't know what they're waiting for, but they're waiting for something, life event or something to happen before they move into this process. And, I don't know if it's through fear or it's just through what our society thinks like the homeowner should look like or the homeowner family should look like. But yeah, kind of talk about that. What would be your advice for these ladies that come to me and say, I don't think, or I don't know if I should do it because I may get married someday or something like that?
I think that we have no idea what God has planned for us. And I think that all we can do is take the best next step. So I guess while I'm answering this question, I will tell you, part of me was like, it was so hard to find a house. But I was like, you know what? It's cool. I'm not supposed to buy a house. That's fine. I'll move back with my parents. I'll save money for like 5 years. And then I was going to move to LA. And as soon as I made that decision, the Holy Spirit very strongly was like, LOL, you're not moving to LA. And the very next house that we looked at, like my mom texted it to me. And I looked at the house online, and like, that's when he was like, that is the house. Like I knew that I had it before I did the walkthrough, before I signed for it. And then when I went and did the walkthrough, it was all just confirmation of like, do this now. So I would say, like, if you have that relationship, listen to the Holy Spirit. Maybe you're going to meet your husband through the process of buying the house, or like could be one of the people that that helps you out with something that you need once you have the house. I would also say, keep in mind, you can always sell it. So like if you do get into a relationship later, maybe he doesn't have a house and maybe he moves into your house. Maybe you both have a house and you guys choose to move into his, or maybe you sell both the places and you guys want to build a new place totally together. So I just think that using all of the what ifs, like if I wait for my husband to show up in my life to get a house, I might never have one because I might not have a husband. Like that's just not something that I know. So I think that if it's something that you want, then you should go after it. And if it's not for you, it won't happen. If it is for you, it will happen. And I wouldn't rely too much on, well, maybe kind of like, I really want to have a husband when I buy a house. So I'm worried that if I buy a house right now, that's going to stop me from getting a husband. I don't think that God works like that. I think that if you're supposed to have a husband, you have a husband regardless of what you do. You will meet him. You might meet him sooner or later based on certain decisions that you make. But I really feel like if you want to have the husband when you buy the house, you could buy a house that's just yours. And then you can get rid of it, and you and your husband can buy a different house.
Yeah. Or use one as a rental property and buy a different house, right? And then have a separate property, right?
A house for a rental property. That's right, Brian.
Start creating some of that generational wealth. One of the things that I think is really cool, and I'll go back to parenting, and as people are watching this, and it may be their first house, or it may be they're older and they have their first house, or their parents and they've already had a house and they're just thinking about their kids. This is such great advice of what your parents were able to do is, walk you through that, 50-40-10 plan, and then help you do that. Be available, because a lot of parents don't have, this extra money to help out with down payments. But, like with me and doing, reverse mortgages, I did one where I had a, grandma who we took out for a reverse mortgage where she wouldn't have a payment or anything. Took $40,000 out for 3 grandkids, and then all 3 of those gave $40,000 to each of those grandkids so that they could get a house in the 25. And so when we start thinking about the generations of us working together as community, and not just you figure it out on your own. I think a lot of a lot of us who went to college and stuff is like, yeah, you go to college, you forgot to pay for it, you forgot to do. And I'm not saying that parents should pay for college. I don't know if that's the thing that, that's a societal thing that we've decided is important, that the parent saves up money and pays for college. If I had my ruthers, I would say I'd rather, there's other ways to go to college. I would rather you pay for a down payment on a house for your kids that can build equity than college that can end up being, or paying for that, college that can end up being, because there's so many scholarships, there's different things out there that you can go to college. And I'm not saying education is not important. I'm not saying don't go to college and buy a house. I'm saying go to college and get the education, but find another way other than your parents paying for it, if there's ability for them to help you with a house. And so, as you're listening to this and thinking about your parents and things that they did, what would you say the best, like, I know you said a couple of things, the best 2 or 3 things through their lives that they instilled in you, because you weren't thinking about buying a house, but they made it a good idea to buy a house, but they kind of just instilled in you of this creating of wealth, not just a house, but wealth in general. What would be those things you think that they instilled in you that you're using as practices right now?
One of the things, it was really important to them that my sisters and I all be self-sufficient. They talked a lot about like not needing to rely on another person to be alive. Like you shouldn't need someone else to pay your bills or whatever. So it was that kind of thing that even when we were looking at colleges and stuff and like looking at degrees, I was like, I want to do something fun that I love. And my dad was very like, okay, but is that fun thing that you love going to pay the bills? And, that is a balance of like, making sure that you figure that out. But I think also I did not want to stay in their house forever. So I was very like, I do have to find a job that's going to afford me a living. And my dad was also very big on, you like a certain lifestyle. So it's not just being able to be self-sufficient, but being self-sufficient to maintain the lifestyle that you want, or noticing that you need to downgrade your lifestyle. So that's another thing, is like, I could have kept renting and I could have gone to a different part of town, to a really old building that I was probably less comfortable in, and gotten some cheaper rent. And then I could have rented for a few more years. But it was like, I had a very specific apartment that I wanted to live in, and it was very expensive. So I think it's also those things and having those conversations. And also being able to ask for help, I think, is a big thing. And noticing where other people's strengths are is something that they also really instilled in me. So there was a lot of like, even if I was confused throughout the process of like looking for a house, like trusting that like, this is my mom's job, it's what she does for a living. And if you're, obviously your realtor's probably not your mom, but trusting that your realtor knows what they're doing. So I think that if they're showing you a bunch of houses that you don't like, are they a bad realtor, or do you have a criteria? Like, are they showing you stuff that you don't like, or are they showing you stuff that's within your budget, trying to help you see that like what you want is not attainable right now with the current budget or whatever. So that's why this is what they're showing you. I think it was also really important to my mom to, because I am very cosmetics based. So I would walk into a house and be like, I hate the carpet, I hate the paint. And my mom was like, don't look at those things. You can change that. Like, what you can't change is the layout of the house. So I need you to look at things like Well, I mean, I guess you can if you want to knock down walls and stuff, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But, you know,
Most likely not.
don't look at the carpet, look at the size of the living room and like the way that the kitchen flows into the next room. Like that's what I need to know if you like or not. So there was that stuff that was very, you know, stop being picky about the wall that's green.
Yeah, because you can paint the wall, right? Gotcha. I have one more question for you that you kind of mentioned, and I think it's a fear for a lot of people that when you're in an apartment and if something goes wrong with the water heater or with the sink faucet leaking, that it's you know, the landlord in most cases comes over and fixes it right away, and you don't have to worry about it because you know those things are taken care of. Although in that rent you're pretty much paying for it, but you don't see it that way.
Yeah.
But when you get your own home, some of those things you're on your own to have to do. Um, what is that fear factor for you, or that thought? I mean, is it that now that it's my house, it's my responsibility if something goes wrong? And is that something that people should be scared of, or something that people, you know, I know there's like warranties and stuff you can buy, but what's your thought process in that whole process of I have to now fix stuff if it breaks?
I don't think that people should be scared of it because I think it's something you can prepare for. So I think when it comes to the financial aspect, you do need to have more of an emergency fund saved if you own a house, because if there's like a plumbing emergency, that it's something that like, you know, something is leaking and you have to fix it right away, you've got to have the cash for that. Whereas, you know, if you're renting, you only need, as long as you've got your rent every month, if you don't have that much of an emergency fund, stuff that happens in your apartment is going to be taken care of because you're paying for that in the rent. Whereas like it's now you're paying your mortgage and you need to save a little bit of extra money, like just in case something happens. I think that's something that can be easily prepared for. I think the other fear factor is probably finding people that you trust. You know, like as a young woman who lives alone, the contracting business is primarily men. And so I am not super comfortable with like, if my toilet breaks and I have to call a plumber or whatever, it's almost always a middle-aged man. And then I just don't know how comfortable I am like alone in my house with a middle-aged or older man. So, but I think that kind of stuff, like you can have a friend or a family member come sit with you. I know a lot of single women that just leave like a giant pair of boots by the door and just be like, oh, he'll be home later. But also I think that's something that good real estate agents have a network of contractors and plumbers, like window people that they should be able to give you. So I would say always work off a referral. Do not just Google and pick any random person. I would like reach out to your community, your local network, and find somebody. I really like small businesses that kind of grow by word of mouth. I have a really, really super nice handyman that he's retired and just likes to stay busy. And we all like, I got him from a friend who I sent him to other friends. And it's just a bunch of people that know this guy and really, really like him. So I would say there are ways to feel safer that way. So the biggest problem is probably just the financial aspect of making sure that you're saving the money for if something happens. But that's also why you do inspections. So during the home inspection part, I would say ask a lot of questions. Your inspector should tell you things like, you know, if an appliance is nearing the end of its life, he should be able to say like, you know, this is going to need to be replaced, not now, but in the next 5 years, you're going to have to replace this water heater or whatever it is. So that way you can look into the cost and you can start planning and preparing for it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm so glad that you came on today. This has been such great advice, and just seeing you succeed, just gives me a warm feeling because I know that others can do the same thing you're doing. And sometimes it's just
one last thing, because I did learn this the hard way. You can't leave your hoses connected in the winter. Nobody said this to me, and
your dad did not tell you that? Oh my God.
I barely have a yard. Like I have some tiny plants that I water, and I just got tired of re-screwing the hose to the faucet thing every day. So I just like completely forgot about it. I was so excited that it was cold enough that I didn't have to water things anymore. And then the new, like the year went by, like new seasons changed, and had a pipe burst. So just keep in mind, if you keep your hose connected to the outdoor faucet, your pipes will freeze, and then when it's warm again, they will explode, and you will have a plumbing emergency. So just unscrew the hoses, disconnect them from all the faucets.
All right, great advice from Samantha Labat. I love it. It's if you are in California, just disregard that whole thing because you don't have to worry about it. But if you are here in Colorado, make sure you disconnect your hoses. And oh, thank you so much. It's just like I said, it's, you know, it warms that we can see somebody else who's done it, you know, and sometimes that's all it takes is if you could do it, I could do it. And so thank you for, you know, talking to us about this process. Thank you for having a mom and dad that, you know, that you had nothing to do with because they had you, but at least to be able to talk about them and talk about their support so that we can learn from their example and the things that they taught and the things that they taught you. And, you know, finally, just, you know, thank you for doing and being willing, you know, as a single, you know, Black woman that is out there in our society that is going for it and making a difference and making an impact, that you are there and willing to take the time to give other folks advice. So I appreciate you. If you guys put stuff down in the comments and you know you need Samantha's advice on something, I will make sure she gets, you know, email her and tell her, and then connect you guys in a way that, you know, that would be safe and would make sure that she's okay. So I thank you again, Samantha. I appreciate you. For those of you who are on the call, make sure that you go to the Black Wealth Housing Summit on June 19th this is 2023, from 5:30 to 7:30 at the Cross Purpose building that's right there on the corner of Martin Luther King and Colorado Boulevard. So you guys have an awesome day, and we look forward to talking to you on the next one. Thank you again, Samantha. Well, thank you for tuning into our podcast today. It has been a fantastic opportunity for us to show you exactly what we're trying to do in the community. And that is to help people to make sure that they have the ability to realize home ownership. And so my name is Brian Arnold. I am a lender. I'm with City First Financial. And so if you have questions, I'm not doing this podcast so that we can, you know, rush all the business over to City First Financial. I'm doing this podcast so that we can make sure that you are taken care of, that you have a real estate agent, that you have a loan officer, that you have a credit repair person, that you have an insurance person, that you have a financial advisor, all working with you towards making your home ownership realization happen. You know, we're also going to be talking about, you know, wealth generation and what it means to pass on to the next generation. I do trusts and wills and making sure that the money that you've accumulated during your lifetime actually passes on to the next generation without going through a thing called probate. And so we want to make sure that we have some unique different things that we may have talked about on this thing that can help you think about what that's going to look like. So thank you again for communicating. Go ahead and subscribe to these YouTube channels, whether it's on YouTube that you're watching the video, or if you are just listening to this on a podcast, that you are subscribing to the podcast, because we are going to have some amazing guests that are coming on and some amazing content. So thank you for the blackwealthexperience.org and getting on that and just coming in and listening to us and then taking advantage of the resources that we're hopefully and education that we're hopefully giving to you. So you have a wonderful, awesome, incredible, awestruck day. You are God's greatest gift, and I want to make sure that you know that. Talk with you guys soon.